Welcome to episode 2 of the Acknowledge to Action podcast. I am your host, Matthew Benko. In this episode, we delve into the delicate balance of leading dual lives in the Reserves and National Guard. Thomas T.J. Garritano shares his remarkable journey of navigating a 21-year military career, initially serving on active duty, followed by his transition to the Air National Guard, all while establishing himself in the civilian sector. Discover how he seamlessly juggled his roles as a dedicated husband, father, family man, Air National Guard Airman, and civilian employee. Tune in as he passionately discusses his career in the Air Force, Air National Guard, and in the civilian sector. Don't miss out on his inspiring journey right here on the Acknowledge to Action podcast. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's great, man. Matt, thanks for having me. It's really good to talk to you again and really share my thoughts on the subject.
Oh man, I can't wait. It's we go back a little bit. So we got a great history. So I know we're gonna talk about a lot of great stuff. We're gonna talk about, your Air National Guard career. And was it 22 years, I think?
Just under 22. I punched out at like 21 and a half. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I know there's a lot of good, we're going to share a lot of good information, a lot of good insight that you're going to provide our audience who are maybe just starting off their National Guard career, their active duty career, or their veteran, any combination of things. So, I'm really excited for this. So, we're kick it off. So my opening question, for all guests and all that too, is just, share a little bit about your military experience and the journey it took you on.
Sure. So, probably like, every other high school kid, that ended up going in the military, I had the college experience first, right? So, lived in Pennsylvania, small Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, right? Wanted to get out of Pennsylvania. Went out to school to Arizona for basically a semester and a half. Really, I'd say everything was going good, right? But I just decided that, hey, I don't want to do school anymore, right? I don't want to do it anymore. So I came home, right? I came home. My father, enlisted in the Army in Vietnam, joined the Pennsylvania Air Guard in '78, and eventually retired in 2008. So he had like 30 something years in the military. But really it was just, I came home from Arizona, and I saw an Air Force commercial. I went to my dad. I'm like, hey, let's go talk to recruiters. See, I think it's a move I want to do now. I got to do something. So, as we're leaving the house, my mom, all over my dad, don't let him sign any papers, don't, make sure I get to talk about it. Well, I signed the papers, right there. So I, did the whole ASFAB, went into the recruiter station, they get your scores, and really it's, you list your 1 through 10 jobs, and this is for active duty. So I listed all these cool jobs, man. And the 10th one was aircraft armament systems, right? My very, very last job. So,
yeah,
enlist, delayed entry in May. I get a call in like June saying, hey, good job. Great news. We got one of your job selections, aircraft armament systems. I'm like,
yep.
Oh, man. Like, I didn't even realize I put it down. I didn't really know what it was. I just saw, hey, there's a cool picture of, I think, an F-16, and there was like weapons around it.
Right there.
Yep. Yeah. Great plane. We'll get into that a little bit later. Spent a good portion of my career there after Willow Grove on F-16. So, yeah, recruiter basically, hey, sign. They're offering if you go in for 6 years, they're offering a enlistment bonus. But the bad part is you can't leave till December. So it's like June time frame. So I was like, all right, fine. I'm gonna take this job. Spend some time with family and stuff like that. And really head out in December. So, went through basic training. And were you always full time guard? Did you ever go active? Were you active duty as
Yeah,
well?
I was. My first 4 years of my enlistment was active duty. Yes, and then
Okay, as weapons as
I was a 2W1. Yep.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So at basic training they give you basically your shred out, right? So
Yep.
it's there's an indicator at the end of 2W111 FE whatever, and I have a Z on there, and when your TI is trying to determine what it is, he's like, look, I'm sorry, I have no idea what this is. I don't know what a 2W111Z is. Here's all the aircraft identifiers. It just says other. So, take that long bus ride up to Shepherd Air Force Base from Lackland, and they're calling out. You kind of everybody's segregated by career field. So there's just the 2W1 dormitory, and they're calling all the shred outs, and there's like 4 of us left, and we were Z shredded. So come to find out, we were like the AFSOC shred out, so AC 130s and H53s and PAVOCs.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, this is pretty cool, but I really wanted to work on, I really wanted to get on, high performance fighters and stuff. And, my classroom is a 1972 H-53 helicopter. That all we're learning on is guns, right? Mini guns, 50 cals. And then you get a little block of the AC-130, so your 105s, your 40s. The good news is my tech school is only 6 weeks compared to the F-16, they're like 30 weeks, right?
Is that because there was OJT at your respective?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
Right. So really, they teach you how to assemble, disassemble the weapons, and put them on a helicopter. There's no AC-130 there, so everybody, the 4 of us that were in there, we all start getting our assignments, calling out names: Herbert Field. It comes to me, and they're like, Kirtland Air Force Base. Yeah, I'm like, where is Kirtland? And you're the trainer was like, man, I'm sorry, man. I'm like, what are you sorry? It's New Mexico. So,
for all our New Mexico listeners, there's nothing wrong with New Mexico.
Yeah, nothing wrong with New Mexico, but when your whole class goes to Florida, and you're going to New Mexico, so
yeah.
So yeah, get out to Kirtland Air Force Base. I was there from March of '99 through May of 2001, right? So
oh wow.
In between that, deployment over to the Middle East, and at the time, my wife was then my girlfriend. She was going to college in Pittsburgh. So I come home on leave before deployment over to Saudi, and while I'm over there, I get a call basically saying, hey, look, I'm pregnant, right? So 20 years old, turning 21 actually in over in the desert where, as you can't drink, you can't do anything, right? So while my friends are turning 21, party and stuff, I'm stuck in the desert, right? So come back from the deployment. My wife is in her final semester of college, so she graduates in December. We get married December 30th, and she moves out to Albuquerque with me. So Kirtland Air Force Base probably had the oldest base housing. I mean, it was like cinder blocks, asbestos floors. Not probably the standards are much higher now, right?
Yeah. It's not your stereotypical what people think Air Force housing's the best,
right?
Yeah.
Right. I was in old housing, man. So we had my son, TJ Jr. in February of 2001. March 2001, I get a call from I forget what, not NPF. It might have been NPF. You're basically your personnel section saying I got non-volunteer orders. So just married, had a kid. I'm thinking, definitely going to Korea. There's no doubt. every 2W1 does a short tour in Korea, right?
Yep.
One or another. So I get there and it's actually a non-vol accompanied if I wanted to Iceland. So,
Oh
you
wow.
know, yeah. So got, talked with my wife, basically said, hey, I could go for a year by myself or you can come with me. We go over to Iceland for 2 years. So in the meantime, I'm only in like 2.5 years and I made senior airman below the zone. So I made senior airman 6 months ahead of schedule, which allowed me to test for staff sergeant right away because I just made the
Okay.
cutoff. So in my transition from Kirtland to Keflavik, I get a call from my old first sergeant. Hey, congratulations, you made the cut for staff sergeant. So here I am at 2.5 years. I got a line for staff, right? So I get over to Iceland. We're a two-man shop, and it's basically F-15 transient support. And the only thing I'm responsible for is 4 ammunition loaders, right? The loaders you use to put the bullets in the F-15.
I
That's
imagine,
my only responsibility over there.
I imagine that was a big not transition, but big difference compared to Kirkland.
Oh yeah, I mean Kirtland
Uh,
was sortie after sortie, working 6 7 days a week, 12 hours on, 12 hours off, um, which was good because just got married, had a kid, so I'm like, great, I get to spend some time with them. So just real quick, obviously, um, September 11th happens over there,
mhm.
and we had a guard unit. And I don't want to dime out the guard unit that was over there, but we had a guard unit with F-15s over there, and so the U-Alls were always loaded with live ammunition. Right there, it's an alert mission. So
Universal ammunition loading system, right?
that's correct. That's correct.
I
Yeah,
still got it.
that
I
is
still
correct.
got it committed to memory. Yeah.
So we wheel them out to
Yeah.
these. The F-15s are in kind of like has like cement, basically cocoons, right? They're sitting
Yeah.
alert. They're supposed to be always loaded, but I mean, outside of your Russian bear that would cross the North Atlantic, they'd launch, escort them out. September 11th happened, and it was like from Alpha to Delta in like a couple hours. So they start loading all the F-15s, and their guns have not been at this time like the ops tempo in the U.S. right, like a guard unit does not load their guns all the time. So they jam every single gun, which means every single U-All is now jammed up, right? So crazy story is we get all the everything unjammed, and I could remember the one pilot walking up as we're like signing off forms and stuff like that, and he goes, I never thought in my career I would be asked to shoot down a civilian airliner. Right. So you could tell he was a little shaken and stuff like what was going on because we were, basically we're escorting airlines down right at the Keflavik airport, the Icelandic airport.
Oh wow.
We were just landing all these jets. So anyway, um, wind up having another kid in Iceland. So my daughter, Natalie, she was born May 29th, 2002. So if you do the math, my kids are like 15 months apart. So leaving Iceland, typically if you're overseas, you have a good opportunity to stay over in like Europe, right? I'm coming off a short tour. Everything looks good. My overseas list was just Korea. So I'm not going one short tour to another. And my return list back to the States was Kirtland, Seymour Johnson, and Ellsworth Air Force Base. So talked it over with Amy. We thought let's go to South Dakota. So show up as a staff sergeant, 7 level, all certification, thinking, I'm sitting on top of the world and I've yet to touch a bomb yet in my career, right? I've yet to load an actual weapon.
And so as you advanced through your Air Force career, it allowed you to become an aircraft armament systems loader on any aircraft that the Air Force
That's
has, right?
correct.
Based off wherever you PCS. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you go through your 3, 5, 7 level.
Yep.
So, I guess the unfortunate Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, we loved it. It was a great place to live. It was awesome. the unfortunate thing is it was now assigned to a B1 squadron. So never touching an actual bomb weapon. It was a challenge, right? I went from helicopters to
Wow. Yeah.
ULs to now managing two load crews, which basically you have you're a team chief. So you have four individuals on a load crew, and there's typically two load crews that are on a B1 that it carries 83 500-pound bombs. So
Wow.
loading a B1 takes like 5-6 hours.
Yeah.
For me, for a long time, it probably took like 9 or 10. So my first thinking I'm on top of the world, made rank so fast. Get assigned a load crew, go through load barn. My very first load is a CBU 87. Obviously, it's an inert. It has like a radome on the front of it, like a glass plastic radome. You're standing on the top rung of a ladder. You load the bomb up. You can't really see it. You're basically remote controlling the load arm up into the aircraft. Lock the bomb in. The inspector goes up and he says, "Hey, your lugs are crooked. I need you to drop it." And before you can say don't drop it yet, I dropped it. And being it was crooked, smashed into the bulkhead of the
Oh
B1
man.
and shattered the radome, right?
Oh
So
man.
I'm like, man, this is a great way to make a first impression, right? I'm like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, man. Just like, you know, the challenge of moving three times in such a short period of time. It's kind of like when you move into a new school, right? Like
Yeah.
you're the new guy, and you know, so so for a long time they called me LD, load disaster, right? Because
Oh.
I'll own it, right? I'll own it.
Yeah.
But hey, look, I was like, damn it, I'm going to get good at this aircraft.
Yeah.
One way or another, I'm going to get good at this aircraft. So just man, I arrived in July, and in September we were notifying we were deploying for I think it was about 6 month deployment. This is right in still the beginning of Iraqi freedom.
Yeah.
So had no idea where we were going, but just knew we were going somewhere. So we wind up going to Diego Garcia, which beats the hell out of the desert. It's a tropical island. Like
Yeah.
we were basically living in huts on the beach. Um, but all we did was load, right? Load, load bombs. The jets would take off. They'd come back. We reload them. But I got really, really good at loading on the B1. So re-enlisted. I was at my 5 year mark, and I could re up at my 5 year mark.
Oh, is that
And
because you did a 6 year enlistment?
yes,
Oh,
that's
okay.
right.
Okay. Cool.
So
All right.
I was a year out, right? So 5 years in, and the enlistment bonus was crazy. Well, crazy when you look at it. Back then, it was a lot of money. It was like 38,000 for weapons loader to stay in for another 6 years. So hey, no doubt, and I'm re-enlisting. They gave me half up front. I think it was like 19,000, and then they'll give you another 19,000 at your 3 year mark of another 6 year enlistment. So with the re-enlistment, I had a preference. I could pick anywhere I wanted to go.
Wow.
Not real. Looking back, we probably should have stayed in South Dakota, but we wanted to go to Florida. Right, went down to Tyndall Air Force Base, where another bizarre job. I show up and I'm like a foreign military liaison. So what would occur? I wasn't in the active side of Tyndall, like a training squad or nothing. I was with like the 83rd Fighter Wing or 83rd Weapons Evaluation Group, where foreign countries would come in and we would evaluate them on their loading, and we'd put weapons on their jets and we'd test them and stuff like that, right? So once again, one slot deep, and I'm loving life, right? Tyndall's great. I have a great job, not working weekends, doing some pretty cool stuff, meeting some cool people, traveling around. I'd go evaluate the incoming units before they would actually get down to Tyndall. Well, at that same time, the Air Force decided to come out with force shaping. So doesn't matter if you took the reenlistment bonus. if you wanted to transfer your time to the Guard, there's no questions asked. You can go transfer your time to the Air National Guard. So, and I go back to, like, we didn't realize how much we liked South Dakota until we got to Florida, and the heat and the bugs. It was just miserable, man. Like, it was just, it wasn't what we expected, put it that
Yeah.
way. So, I had the opportunity to go back to Pennsylvania, right? Amy's family's from here. My wife's Amy. I'm from here. So, transferred what's called Palace Chase, right? You leave active duty into the Guard. So joined, in 2005, transferred from Tyndall up to Willow Grove.
Okay.
So, at that, but just part-time
Yeah.
guardsman. So, with that, I had to kind of like line a job up. I have two kids. I do not have a degree yet, but I planned on going to school with the Montgomery GI Bill at the time. Um, so I got, I would say, lucky. It seems like I'm always getting lucky, but I landed a job at Tobyhanna Army Depot. So it's right up in the Poconos, where they repair all kind of electronics for Air Force, Army, Navy. So I got a job as an electronics technician before I even got back to Pennsylvania. So I had a job lined up, start date and everything. So
Yeah.
kind of worked out. And of course, I joined the 111th there in Willow Grove, so right outside of Philadelphia. Um, from there, I started going back to school, working toward the bachelor's degree. The challenge is, when they say Air National Guard is part time, 1 week in a month, that's really never how it seemed for me to shake out. Right, we always had something going on that, hey, we need you down here for a week. Can you come in back to back weekends? And it's a challenge because I had two young kids. I'm working crazy hours. Trying to basically my I think my pay was like $23 an hour, so I worked as much overtime as possible. So working, and I was working a night shift, right? So I'd go in at 6 o'clock at night and basically leave at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And this is 5 and even 6 days a week when I could work Saturdays when there wasn't a drill. So I really was, if I wasn't working, I was probably sleeping.
Yeah.
So, and then the drill weekends would pop up, right? So you're looking at, really, I have maybe 4 free days out of a month that I could spend with my family, spend with the kids. So I would say at first it was very challenging. And quite honestly, it was miserable, right? Like, it seemed like every time we had something cool to do as a family, like I had drill, right? Or we had an exercise and we had to come in from Thursday to Sunday.
Yep.
So managing that was, I would say, what's the great thing is, man, I have a great wife who understood that, like, really, this, I signed up for it, right? And
Yeah.
when I say I signed up for it, we all signed up for it, the entire family. So she never complained. Never once did it cross her mind to say, I want you to get out. Really left that up to me, but she would support me no matter what. So I think in the beginning it was very difficult to manage balancing, your with all the stuff you have going on as a outside civilian, right? Whether it be work, family, you really had to work around your guard schedule. Now things did get better. I figured out, I looked at it from a different perspective, right? I started looking at things from a different perspective. So, um, 2008, were you on a deployment?
Yeah, I was. I got to Willow Grove in 2007, November 2007, and it put me right on track to be with you guys when we went to
Okay.
Afghanistan. Yeah, in
Okay. Yeah.
2008.
So
Yeah, we went like April or May timeframe, or was it
I,
closer to the
I think
summer?
it was like, man, I don't know if it was June or October
It
or
was that summer. It was like from June until October was, I think,
I,
our allotted time in that. Yeah.
and I remember coming back because the Phillies won the World Series like like 3 weeks after we got back,
Yes.
right? So,
Yep.
um, no, so look, as I got proficient at the A10, um, you know, had a load crew, which to Ryan Summers, who we talked about a little bit before, one of my best friends, we're close contact. We exchange messages and, still kind of joke around with each other a little bit. But Ryan brought an individual, Vince. I'm sure you remember Vince. So, so Vince was a character, right? So they became our load crew, going
Yeah.
over to my load crew going over to Afghanistan, right?
I think we
And
were right across. I forget what B Hut was. Me and my crew were in B Hut. I forget the number.
yeah,
You
yeah,
guys were right
they
across. We
shut
would
up.
hang out.
Yeah. They had to basically condemn the place we were living in after we
Yes.
left.
Yeah.
So I had to take obviously a long leave of absence from my job, and at the same time I'm going to school as well, right? So I'm taking
Yeah.
online classes, taking classes in community college, taking online classes. So I'm working towards my bachelor's degree. So I started my degree in 2006, BS in management, but I couldn't do it full time, man, because I working, kids,
Yeah.
military. But the good thing is I had the not only did I have a GI Bill, I had the Pennsylvania, the kicker, the GI
Yep.
Bill kicker as well. So really, school didn't cost me anything, but it was really time. Time was the issue. So I was actually taking doing work, my classwork on a deployment. We'd work. I think it was 12-hour shifts, man, if I can't remember. And then when I had time, I'd do my classwork. But managing at that point, my youngest son was born September 2007. So, packing up, leaving my wife, three young kids. Once again, it's a challenge when you have a family. It's a challenge when you're just single, right? But
Absolutely.
you throw layers on top of that where when you deploy, you want to just focus on what you're doing. You want to focus on doing it safe, doing it right, get coming back, right? So, but that's not really how it goes, right? You're always worried about what's going on at home, knowing I have three hellions that my wife has to drag to the grocery store, and take everywhere. At that time, my oldest was 7, Natalie was 6, and then Aiden was basically a newborn, right?
Oh my gosh. I mean,
Yeah.
just to get their teeth brushed and ready for bed is an epic
Right.
accomplishment every night. Yeah. Let
Yeah.
alone all
So,
the other stuff. Yeah.
but she never complained, man. She never complained. Never wavered, man. And she was more focused on making sure everything was good with me, everything was going okay. Assured me everything was good at home when I could see, like, man, you look tired, like when we would talk and on what was that called, Skype. Um, so anyway, we get back from that deployment, notified we got bracked, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you can keep your guard squadron, but we're taking your aircraft. So
Yep. So then, we just base realignment closure, right? It was
yeah,
they're pretty
base
much for
realignment
saying,
closure.
"Hey, thanks for deploying." That was our final. I know at Willow Grove, like the writing was on the wall before we left,
Yeah.
but and that was like our last operational deployment, at a time, and the operation tempo was off the charts when we were there in
Yes.
2000. I mean, it was arguably at its peak,
Yep.
and so yeah, for everything you're touching upon, it impacts our lives in so many different ways. And sharing what you're sharing, I just want to point this out is um, when we pull back those layers, like you said, it's not just like you said, if you're single and 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year, deployment, it seems pretty straightforward, but it never is. You add those
Right.
layers. And I've learned, just in my experience with my National Guard career and active duty career, similar to yourself, is Um, a lot of just in general, people don't understand, therefore they can't or don't know how to appreciate. So what you're saying, you're adding such uh, critical layers and perspectives that I think are going to help people understand a little bit better and to appreciate like wow this is not just your 1 weekend a month 2 weeks out of the year. So I just wanted to point that out. I mean, you're bringing
Yeah,
back
yeah,
so many good memories, so much critical information. So I just wanted to highlight that stuff. But coming back and all that is
yeah.
then it's a whole nother
And
ball game. It's a whole nother ball of wax,
yeah,
to
yeah.
deal with.
So when you throw on all that, and then you look
Yep.
at our actual job in the military, we're like one of the only timed jobs, right, in the military where most of it is, hey, do it safe, do it right. Well, yeah, we have to do it safe, but we're also under pressure of a clock to get certified, right? You have so
Oh
much
yeah, yeah,
time.
yeah.
So which really, that pressure helped me in many different ways be able to handle many different things at many different times. But so come back from that deployment, and at this point I am about to get my bachelor's degree, and I lost my job. Right, they laid off a
Oh
bunch
my
of
goodness.
folks up at Tobiana, and I was a contractor employee. I wasn't a government worker at the time. Um, so thinking about okay, what the heck am I going to do, right? Like I got to get another job. Got to find another job. So my
And to
first thought was,
talk about a punch in the gut for getting bracked, and then followed up by your civilian job. I mean, there's a lot of flavorful ways we could describe that, but
yeah,
you get punched in the gut by the Department of Defense.
yep,
Big Daddy Department of Defense. Uncle Sam says, "Hey, thanks for your deployment. Oh, by the way, your unit's shutting down, getting real. Find a new home. It sucks to be you." And then your civilian career. It's a slap in the
yeah.
face, or however you want. So, wow. Okay, I that's tough. That's
Oh, yeah, yeah.
wow.
So there's only two things you can do, right? You can totally collapse,
Yeah.
and or you really stare at it in the face and say, okay, it's not the worst thing that's going to happen to me. Let's figure this out. Um, and yeah, I keep going back to all like the cool jobs I had, bounce around active duty, and it just seemed like luck, faith was always on my side, man. So have a close relative. He was up, for a high school football game, watching my cousin, his nephew. I haven't seen him in a long time. Retired Navy guy. Um, we started talking, and he had a similar career field he was retired aircraft ordnance, right? AO in the Navy is a weapons loader. So we started talking about, hey, what are you doing these days and stuff. And I kind of, I gave him, hey, I just got back from deployment. Ironically, lost my job. He's like, you have a degree? I'm like, yeah, I'm about to get my degree. He's like, all right. He's like, I'm gonna call you. So maybe like 2 months later, not even like three weeks later, I get a call. Um, my cousin was Hank. He's like, hey, I want you to come work with me. I'm like, all right, well, what are you doing? He's like, well, it's kind of difficult to explain, but it has to do with foreign military sales. And he's like, do you understand? Weapons and stuff. So he's like, this should be an easy transition for you, but I'll school you up on what we're doing. So I take a job down at Pax River, Maryland, south western shore, not
So
not
this
by
was
Ocean City, the other, like south of DC.
this was approximately
Um,
around 2008 2009 timeframe,
yeah,
like
yeah,
following our deployment and the BRAC and all that. Okay,
yep,
so
yeah.
okay,
So I looked at this as like, okay, I can. I was lit. He offered, hey, you can stay at my house until you figure out, how to, if you want to stay, you want to do this job, move the family down. Um, yeah, you can fit all on you, your timeline. You could stay for however long you want. So which was awesome, right? He's a great guy. Gave you the shirt off his back. So what I started getting into was really, um, what we can talk about is we would sell weapons to foreign countries, um, and we provide them training, integration on their aircraft, right?
Okay.
So still kind of staying in the weapons world. It was like a dream job, great pay. The only downside was I was down there, 4 days a week. I drive down on a Monday morning and then come home on um, a Thursday night. So rough on the family, right? But once again, I go back to my wife totally understanding. Hey, it's a good job. Like this is temporary. We'll figure everything out. Just so happens the 113th Fighter Wing out of DC F-16 Squadron, way short on weapons loaders. So like I found a home, right, to transfer instead of cross training or anything. I could just transfer from Willow Grove down to DC, which
Hmm.
it was like the planets aligned, right? It's why I go back to, man, whether it's faith, luck, whatever. Like it always seemed something would happen, right? Something, and keeping a positive attitude was always something I try to do. Never get down. Look at things from it could always be worse. So join join the 113th down there in DC in 2000, January of like I think it was January of '09 or maybe it was somewhere in 2009. I transferred down there. I can't. It's been a while. Um, so I have this great job and I have drill, um, truly one weekend a month at the time. So I'm away from my family really, 4 days a week. And then on those drill weekends, I wouldn't see him for like 2 weeks. So really, I was only home like 4 or 5 days a month.
Yeah.
And once again, you talk about balancing everything. And my wife and I always, we always talked about, hey, it's yes, now is important, but it's about the end game, right? Where do we want to be? Where do we want to get to? Where do we want to raise our kids? So we moved the family. Let me back up a little bit first. So 2011 deployed again back to Bagram to Afghanistan,
Hmm.
um, and that was a rough deployment, man. That was rough. We left. I was on the advanced team, so I think we left in like end of July, early August, and got back December 23rd.
Oh, geez.
So now I say that was a long deployment. By all means, for everyone watching this, I would talk to the Army dudes over there who are over there, the Army Guard guys who are over there like 12, 18 months. Like, hats off to them, man. Like, the conditions they had to live in, I mean, we didn't have great conditions, but it was like, the Taj Mahal compared to what these Army
Yeah.
dudes are living out. And so, once again, I always put things in the perspective of it could always be worse, right? It could always be much worse. I can remember towards the end, it was like 2 weeks before Christmas, and there was like some BS rule where only we at this point we were in the hardened shelters, no more B huts, right? You're in like these hardened shelters with 6 guys in a room and community shower, but didn't bother. I don't care. We were all grown men, right? For the most part, some younger kids. But I can remember these army dudes. They were like parked outside the chow hall, which our shelter was right behind it. And this young lieutenant walks up, and I'm waiting to catch the bus. Right, so it was as a bus from where you lived. You go all
Yeah.
the way around
Around
the
the, yeah.
airfield.
To,
Yeah, yeah.
yep.
So he's like, man, is there anywhere I could use a shower or anything? He's like, we haven't showered in days, man. We just came back in from the field. Clear signs on the door, like no, only individuals staying in this building. So yeah, I had Vince. Vince was with me at the time. Vince followed me to DC. Um, so like Vince, go let them in, man. Just stay in there with them because they were worried about your rifles are in there and yeah, everything's with you when you're sleeping, right? So all your magazines and stuff like that. But these army dudes, man, were great. Like they literally looked like they got the hell beat out of them, man. I mean, they were just filthy, tired, dirty. Um, so yeah, we let them into our shelter, man. They showered, thanked us, and off they went. But I just remember it stuck out to me for some reason because it's always like you want to help people any way you can, right? Especially over there.
Oh, especially
So
over there, but it's I don't know how to describe it. Like what comes to mind, it's like the wild, wild west. Like, yeah,
yeah,
there's order, there's structure, generally speaking, but there's a lot of unconventional way of getting things done. Whether it's
yes,
daily living to, yeah, we could go down that list. But wow, that's an interesting story. And yeah, here, okay, no, that's yeah,
yeah. So we come back, like I said, in December of 11, and at this point, it's been basically 2 years, 2 years in between my deployments, right? And 2 years I've been living down in Maryland, without my family, right? 5 days a month, I'm home. So we decided to sell our house in Jim Thorpe, move down to Maryland. So moved down to Maryland. Everything's great, man. We're together. I'm home every night. 1 week in a month, I'm just driving up the road to my guard unit. Like everything's good. And then in 2015, I have like an opportunity of a lifetime. So at this point, I'm a government civilian, working for the Navy as like a program manager of foreign military sales.
okay,
I get an opportunity to move to Australia
wow,
and live with the Australian Navy, work with the Australian Navy, and set up a program that we sold to them. But be over there for 2 years and stand the program up, right? Make sure
wow,
everything goes perfect. I'm the U.S. representative over there. I'm making sure everything's taken care of, and making sure everybody back the team back in the states is getting what they need to get over to us. I can't really go into program specifics, but you
yeah,
you, you kind of get what I'm getting at. However, I still had that commitment of my guard, right? Because at this point, Matt, I am 2015. I am 4 years away. I'm in 16 years, man. I'm
yeah.
4 years away from retirement, and I did not want to. I re-enlisted down at again for another 6, right? So my enlistment brought me to 2016. So I actually re-enlisted at the embassy, our embassy in Australia. I drove there. They re-enlisted me, and they sent the paperwork back to the guard unit. Right.
Wow,
Um,
that's super interesting and cool.
yeah, it was wild, man. So I would fly back, and I had a great flight chief. I had a great leadership. Um, I
So
think they
wait,
kind
you
of
you would fly back from Australia to, is that what you're saying?
yeah. Just I would come back once a year and do two
Oh,
weeks. I
okay,
would do
okay,
all my
I got you.
drills in one shot.
I'm tracking. I see what you're saying. So annually, you come back, fly, and then knock out like 2 weeks. So you'd be on orders, whether
Yep.
18 days or whatever. Meet all your benchmarks, your training, all that stuff. Oh, wow, that's very interesting. That's really interesting.
And before I accepted that job in Australia, I sat down with them, and it was basically like, look,
Yeah.
I don't want to get out. I'm too close to retirement. Can you work with me? And from the senior master sergeant that was in charge, who became a chief, all the way up to the full bird colonel, they're like, yeah, go do this. We'll work out how you work out your
Yeah, the
drills, right?
specific, that's to get that acknowledgement and that support is incredible. Because
Yeah,
I mean, this is, and this opportunity that you described that you got in 2017. It's just amazing. I'm listening to it and I'm processing. I'm like, wow, we could have a whole nother hour and whole nother episode of just that alone. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we're just skimming the surface. Um, but no, I just wanted to point that out. Just hearing that is incredible in the sense that man, here you're senior master sergeant, and your immediate leadership said, "Yes, we got you. We're figured out. Don't worry. Go take advantage of this lifetime opportunity." That really says something about leadership,
Yeah.
about the culture, and all that stuff we hear about leadership and supporting one another. Yeah.
Yeah, he like I said, the leadership was fantastic. Supported me 100%. Um, Ironically, this is a crazy part. We were flying home, so as a government civilian, I could take hops. Being I'm overseas, I could take any military aircraft
Okay.
back. So there was a C-17 that came in weekly to close to where I was in Australia. So when we flew home from Australia, we took a hop. My family and I, we jumped on a C-17. The kids were loving it. Right at this point, I have four
All
kids.
the leg room you get, I'm sure
Yeah,
you, you can walk
yeah.
around, stretch.
We flew from east coast of Australia to Guam. At Guam, my guard unit was actually deployed. So as I'm there, I call up, and once again, Vince is on that deployment. Guam is Guam, right? I'm like, I just landed. I'm over in the terminal. Can you bring me like some food? We're starving. It was a long flight. So he came. It was so weird. So I'm seeing my guard unit on an actual deployment. I'm just in transient from a civilian job. So it was cool, man. I went from Australia to Guam, Hawaii to Travis Air Force Base. From Hawaii to Travis, we flew on a C-5, and then we bought plane tickets from Travis back to Pennsylvania for Christmas. Going back, we were on a KC-10, and my kids got to sit in the back and watch them actually refuel some aircraft, which was
Oh,
awesome.
like with the boom operator and all
Yeah.
that. Oh, dude, I mean, you never forget something like that. Like
No,
that.
no.
That's amazing.
So, there was no more deployments really after 2011 for me. I think,
Yeah.
I had five deployments from 98 to 2011. But when I got back from Australia, I moved back to Pennsylvania. Um, I was still working as a Navy civilian, but my job allowed me to kind of work remotely because it's all international stuff. So I was constantly traveling. And like I said, that's another conversation, man. I've been all over the world. I've been to India like 32 times. I've just wild stories. But, I came back, transitioned back in normal life, got back, to a routine guard schedule. But the whole time, man, it's if you're gonna do it, you got to do it right. You got to commit to it. You know, put
Yeah.
your time in. And I go back to it's always about the end goal, right? Get to retirement. Check that box. And I almost felt like and it was just crazy to say, like I owed the Air Force something, right? I wanted to stay in for 20 because everything up to that point, everything that was given to me, um,
Hmm.
I say luck, faith, probably faith, but like it was all because of my military experience, right? Everything had to do with what I did in the military, transitioning to civilian life. It seemed like the career path I stayed on always kept me around weapons and airplanes, and it's fascinating. So retired out of the guard in June 2nd, 2019 was my retirement date. And since then, I've also left Navair. I'm actually working for a private company. I run their business development sector for aerospace modification work. So it was 21 years of doing that balance of sacrificing your personal time, your family's time with you. And it's like you said, it's never straightforward, man. I
Mhm.
cannot remember a year where I just went like 1 week in a month, right? It was always like, hey, we need you to come down a week here, or there's an exercise going on. Can you give us a week? And you pull away from your civilian job, and it. But at the end of the day, man, I look back on everything. I would not do anything different. So
Man, what an amazing journey. We talked a little bit, before we started recording and all that, and you touched upon everything what acknowledge to action represents and what this podcast is like. Acknowledge, accept, process, plan, action. Right. I mean, you just shared. I mean, you just skimmed the surface on your experiences.
right,
And it's so. I mean, what I'm taking away from it in the moment now as I'm processing all this, talking about processing, is the value in this, and how you applied. You offered. You're offering a very unique perspective, but that a lot of us who wear the uniform in the National Guard Reserve component and active duty, so can relate to and understand and empathize to use it to acknowledge and then eventually take action. And sometimes that action is a forecasted, I want to do X, Y, and Z to accomplish this, right? Like,
yeah,
using examples, getting a degree. Yeah, you didn't go the traditional 4 years, freshman, but you did it. You went through a trajectory and you met their criteria. But there's other experiences that I heard you saying, like, you just acknowledge, hey, this is going to be challenging. I'm going to need some help to navigate it. Obviously, our family is, if not the most critical, crucial component of that. And having that support is just beyond amazing. What any words can kind of encapsulate and summarize, right? In addition
yep,
to leadership and all that stuff too. But man, when you look back on it, it's like, man, it's not easy. It's a lot more like you sign up. I don't like I knew when I went in when I was 17. I did delayed enlistment. I didn't know what I was signing up for. Like
yeah,
you, I became a 2W1 armament. I went to MEPS and they said, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "Well, since I'm going to the Air Force, I like to work on aircraft. I like to work outside and work with my hands." I got what I asked for,
yeah,
and go back to what you said. I would do it exactly the same way, and um, but man, there's just so regardless of what branch of service we're in, what component, whether it's active duty, reserves, National Guard. I know we're a lot more closely aligned over the years because of how operations are and overseas.
yep,
There's degrees of challenges that we all experience and go through. Active duty, a traditional active duty trajectory, absolutely some challenges there. But with the reserves and the guard, this episode in particular just focus on the different degrees of challenges that I think even personally we could overlook and sometimes not even self acknowledge. Like, but
yeah,
when we take inventory of that, it's like, wow, man, I did that. Like, whew. It's like after running, you don't realize like it's like running a marathon. Slow and steady wins the race, right? To get your
right,
20 years. All right, so it's not 26 miles, but 20 years. It's like, man, that was a journey. That was a journey.
yeah,
There were some good parts. There were some very challenging parts. There were just some not so fun parts, but you stuck with it. And I think that's the significance of just acknowledging that. And as a 17-year, I don't know there's too many 17-year-olds out there that would acknowledge and have that foresight like that. But hearing these sort of things can, validate somebody's other experiences that they went through. I've had my experience in my own way, but I absolutely, and also somebody just starting that journey off. It's like, okay, it
yeah,
puts some tools in those toolbox. So, wow. I mean, I'm going to be processing what we've been talking about for quite some time, man. This is amazing. I mean, I know we have a great history, but man, there's a lot of, um, there's a lot I didn't know, and it's like,
yeah, yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing your story
No,
and your journey, man.
yeah, and whoever watches this, man, it's I think how I look at things is you're gonna and people call them failures. I call them learning. You learn, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be decisions that don't go your way. You learn from that. I see too many younger veterans and that maybe they did four and get out. They get down on themselves. They get depressed. Like the sun will come up tomorrow, right? You
Hmm.
you have a new day every day. Um, you know, and not, I mean, being close to God and your family you got to look at things from a different lens of
Hmm.
it's not that bad, right? Like when things get challenging, you got to take each challenge head on. You got to take it head on
You got to
because
acknowledge it. Yeah, head on,
you got
acknowledge
to
it. Right.
acknowledge it. You got
Yep.
to acknowledge it and get through it. Because if you acknowledge it and try to go around it, it just gets harder, right?
Hmm.
There, there, there are certain situations you just have to get head on. And you know what? At the end of the day, your head's going to be on a pillow, and the next morning the sun's going to come up, and you're going to be getting out of bed. So, like, it's yeah, that's my message really. Like,
Yeah.
it's just I don't want to make it sound simple because it's not simple. Like
Yeah.
it's a journey, but it is what you make it, right? And don't look at things as failures. It's learning. You're learning, right? So I lost my civilian job. All right, I just got to move on, right? Got to
Yeah.
move on. So
It's tough to meet yourself where you're at, but once you start doing that and you get into that habit of say acknowledging it becomes more. I'm not saying easier. Okay, that's not
yeah, right.
what I'm saying, but it becomes more manageable. And I've learned over the years and just through my experience and like it's a mindset. You said mindset quite a few times during the last hour,
Yeah,
and it's a mindset. Like that's a choice we have, and if we say, all right, this is my mindset to deal with X, Y, and Z situation, variables, whatever, I'm going to be able to better manage it. Because if you don't, like you said, if you go around it, avoid it, or whatever, deflect it, it's going to manage you. And that's when
yeah,
we get more undesirable results. But if we deal with it head on, that it helps us focus on those more desirable outcomes, more manageable. And but just to acknowledge that and to take time to process, to ask for help when we need help, to
yes,
offer a lending hand. Going back to what you said, being over at Bagram in Afghanistan, like you didn't have to help those army guys. Like you could have said, "Look, hey, read it, beat it, sucks to be you." No, you did it, and it ended up being a good experience for all parties involved. Um,
yeah, and it's very. It seems like my entire life like-minded people we gravitate together, right? Like
mm,
I've only and maybe I just try to keep a lot of the negativity into negative individuals at arm's length away. But for the most part, man, like even for yourself, like we're kind of like-minded of you just got to work through things, man. You
yeah,
just got to work through things. And it's not things don't go your way, it's not the end of the world. It's not, and that's easy for me to say, but I'm not in everybody else's shoes. So like you said, you always want to lend a hand, talk to people, figure out what's on their mind, and help them, like you said, acknowledge challenges, and not only yourself but help your family, you know help strangers, man. You get through things, just be a good human being, which we're lacking right now. So,
yeah.
but yeah, this was great, Matt. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Your story, sharing your journey, is a testament to what you just said. Like I can't, emphasize enough how much that emphasizes that. And like here's an example of what you know, um, what we go through and experience. But you got, the takeaway for me, regardless, who's ever listening, what age, this is some tools in your toolbox just to add a perspective, add a layer. So like you said, when those things, when it's not a matter if, but when things do get a little tough or overwhelming, it's like, hey, this too will pass. But what can I do to help it pass? In a more manageable format.
Yeah,
So and too. So cool, man. Well, hey, we're always gonna finish this up with a song. So I'm building the acknowledge to action playlist, right? Music playlist. As I learn more of the copyright and the ways of the podcasting world, maybe at some point we could play a clip of it. But for now, this playlist will live in Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora or whatnot. It'll be accessible.
Yeah.
And it'll also be accessible on the Acknowledge to Accept YouTube channel. So what song do you want to dedicate to the Acknowledge to Action playlist for our listeners?
So I would go with Imagine Dragons and Bones.
Okay. Good song. That's a great song. And that's awesome. And if, as I learn the ways of copyright, you may be hearing it right now, a clip of it. But if not, go to Spotify, go to Apple Music, YouTube it, right? We'll find a way to make that an access point. Yeah, that's another, finishing on an access point. We all need a hub and access point for these resources, support, and guidance. And I'm so thankful and proud to be able to add this as a resource to the Acknowledge to Action access point too. And yours, I'm the invite's always out there. We talked a little bit before, like we're kick the can down the road a little bit, but we'll have a joint session with, maybe we'll have a Willow Grove reunion here to add more perspective and have a group discussion. The options are out there, and I look forward to this evolving and growing. And I really want to extend that invite to you, that you're always welcome and a part of that. Okay.
Awesome. No, I'm looking forward to watching all the podcasts, man. I think you're doing a great thing here. And I'll promote this, podcast, dude, on my LinkedIn and everywhere else, man. But yeah, keep up the great work. And yeah, I'm so glad we linked back up, man. I really am.
Same here, TJ. Until next time, man, I look forward to staying in touch and staying engaged.
Absolutely, man.
As we wrap up episode 2, a heartfelt thank you goes out to TJ for sharing his remarkable journey with Acknowledge to Action. His story resonates deeply, showcasing how he navigated the challenges and triumphs of his path with resilience and determination. It's truly inspiring to witness how he translated his military experience into post-uniform success, particularly in his impactful roles within the commercial defense industry, forging strong partnerships worldwide. In TJ's own words, shared prior to our conversation and this podcast, I do not take credit for my success. I was always surrounded with superior leadership and teammates that would run through endless barriers to complete a job or mission. None of this is possible without the strength of my wife supporting me and my relationship with God. Once again, a big thank you to TJ for opening up and sharing his journey with us. We eagerly anticipate staying connected and engaged with you. And as always, remember to embrace the journey. Until next time.